Hi everyone, this is your host Annie Zhang, and this is Hello Metaverse. Remember Kim Kardashian's notorious Kimoji system, where you could access hundreds of Kim-themed emojis and GIFs? The modern iteration of that is what the startup Genies is offering to thousands of celebrities, and ultimately to you as well. Genies is currently working with A-list celebrities such as Justin Bieber, Shawn Mendes, Cardi B, and so many more to help them create dynamic and photorealistic avatars that they can share on platforms like TikTok and Instagram as a way to engage their fans, tell digitally native stories, and perpetuate their brands. But for Akash Nigam, the CEO of Genies, avatars represent more than just a PR enabler for celebrities. As someone who struggled with social anxiety and always found it more comfortable to connect with others behind the keyboard, he sees avatars and digital identities as a way to be exactly who you want to be and recreate yourself to match your insides. Especially in a world where there is so much toxicity on the internet and judgment towards people's physical selves, Akash views pseudonymous avatars as a critical step to building connections with like-minded people, irrespective of your physical construct. In today's episode, we'll explore where he thinks the future of avatar technology is headed, including decentralized ownership and creation, a marketplace on the blockchain, and digital communities as the future iteration of country clubs and the Greek system. More about Akash, he is also the founder of Genies' investment arm, Humans, where they have invested in companies such as OpenSea, Dapper Labs, Clubhouse, and so many more. He is passionate about NFT identity projects and is a proud member of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. As a disclosure, all opinions and points of view in this podcast are my own. It does not represent the views of Roblox, my current employer, and is not affiliated with the company. Here is my conversation with Akash Nigam. You are one of the leaders in the industry right now in terms of defining what avatar technology is and what the future of it is going to be, being the CEO of Genies. And, I'm curious what led to this moment. Why were you curious to get so invested in avatars?
I mean, it's a somewhat loaded question, and it's a long-winded one to an extent, so I'll try to be succinct. But I suffer from anxiety and depression, felt most comfortable behind my keyboard throughout my entire life, which is weird. Like a lot of the time I compensate for my anxiety and my depression by being extra extroverted in so many ways. And it was just like weird, like growing up, like I could never really be exactly who I wanted to be in the physical world. Like if I was in person with somebody, I always had to put up a different facade. And so I started building a lot of different social apps with a couple of my buddies pretty early on. Like when I was 14 years old, started building, it's cliche, like, born and raised in Silicon Valley and so forth, but still nonetheless, we're building very, very early on, came out with around 50 different apps. All of them sucked. Like literally every single one of them get like 4 or 5 users, whatever, but they all had a consistent theme, which was really trying to optimize social behaviors on the internet. And again, it's just because I felt more myself on the internet itself. And so had around like a decade, maybe a little bit less than that because I was a senior in college, had around like 8 years of experience of building in the social ecosystem for quite some time. And then finally kind of stumbled across, after like video messaging and photo messaging and things of that nature, try to find almost like a safe haven for your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and really kind of came across the concept of an avatar. And it was just feel like the process of iteration within the social ecosystem. And that was like the first time it felt like a eureka moment. You're like, whoa, like I can actually manifest my personality in a fantastical art expression in a way that photo, video, and text don't just quite justify, right? Like a lot of the time, those mediums are embellic of who you are in the real world. And it always requires real world insertion. Whereas an avatar, you can play with your imagination, your thoughts, and your dreams. And so I felt like it was like the best way to swing the pendulum back to really the founding philosophy of the internet, which is to be exactly who you want to be, right? When you're born on this earth, you have no say in how you're constructed. Like I had no say from whatever superior power there is. This is what I'm going to look like. And this is, my aesthetic. And this is the box that I have to fit in. And so an avatar gives you an opportunity for the very first time to recreate yourself, to match your insides. And that's most important. I think the most therapeutic as well from a mental health perspective is allowing you to build authentic connections with like-minded people, irrespective of your physical construct. And the more vulnerable that we can encourage people to be, the more authentic and candid, the more connections you'll have of strength, right? Whereas like in the real world, like when I was growing up in high school or in college, there's so many different people that like you have like a really, really small group of close best friends. And then, somebody that has 100 friends in today's world, I'd argue that 80 of them are like fake friends, like fake acquaintances, like people that you can't actually confide in and be 100% transparent. Whereas in the digital world, in this metaverse, if you're able to be an avatar and be 100% authentic and open because you're either pseudonymous, and then two, you're also a digital manifestation of your personality. All of a sudden, you're kind of betting everything on really what's important in life, which is just your feelings and your thoughts, nothing more. So that's what kind of led us on this mission. And we're super excited.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I feel like there are so many great points to sort of disentangle here. But I like what you mentioned in terms of being online as an enablement for things that you're able to do that you didn't feel as capable of doing in real life almost. Can you break that down a little bit? Like, what were some of those things that you yourself or you have identified in others you were able to do online through an online identity rather than in person?
I would say in middle school, I was obsessed with this one girl, and I didn't have the courage to really tell her in person. It was the weirdest till date. It's the weirdest relationship I've ever had in my life. Granted, I was in 7th grade. There was this girl I was obsessed with, and she was, I think, into me too. And I sat next to her in Spanish for the entire year. Every single day I would get to Spanish and be like, all right, I'm going to say something to her. I'm going to flirt with her or something like that. And I just didn't have the courage to do so because I think I was insecure about the way I looked. I was insecure about just like myself in general. There were just things I was struggling with. But as soon as I got home and I got into AIM and I got behind my username and I got behind my keyboard, I became the most outgoing, flirty person in the world. I would talk to her for like hours on end. And that's what made it even that much more fucking awkward because I would get there the next day and I still wouldn't say anything in person.
Right.
So it's weird. It's like the ability for you to hide behind. I think hide's a strong word. And I think when you are just texting, you might be hiding. But if you're able to encapsulate this embodiment that's like almost this personification of your feelings, that's kind of like a human, but not because it's in a digital world and it's not limited by your human body. It can be a dragon, it can be an inanimate object, it can be a rock, I can be a lamp, I can be like whatever I want. I think is really unique and cool. So when you're in a social situation, which I suffer from social anxiety as well, like when I'm in a social situation, like there's just real world intimidations and factors that have come into play. And there's like judgments at an all-time high, right? Like, I don't know what it's like to be a kid today in high school with Instagram and Twitter and all those things like TikTok, right? It's like Instagram is probably the gnarliest thing for a 13-year-old. Like one comment from an anonymous account on your Instagram post could send you down a spiral. I know so many kids that are in a depression spiral because of all the intimidation, the bullying, and the judgment that comes from being online. So again, I just think a pseudonymous world and an avatar world is definitely going to be beneficiary. There's obviously like it's a double-edged sword. There's a lot of regulation and moderation that has to happen in the metaverse and in an avatar world for it to be as therapeutic and mentally sound as we discussed. But it's definitely better than currently what you see at Web 2.0.
Yeah, that's a great heartwarming story, but I think you're right in calling out the generation of teenagers right now. They've grown up in such a toxic environment that sometimes it's not even a want, it's like an absolute need. Clearly, avatars and digital identities that are anonymous are becoming more and more popular because there's a backlash to not wanting to expose yourself and be judged. What do you think is causing this, first and foremost? But then also, what are some of those new opportunities that avatars have started to open up for people? Even, for example, like how they show up on the internet. People are starting to put NFTs in like Bored Apes, for example, as their profile pictures as opposed to their real pictures. That's a funny one example. But yeah, I just want to hear about your assessment on that.
I think anonymity, like back in the day, there were like platforms like Secret and Yik Yak. They were number one worldwide and very popular in college campuses and so forth. And like, I think anonymous is great because, again, you just get the most authentic and transparent side of everybody, which always leads to very strong connections. I'm like a big believer in that. Like I think about my closest friends in my life and the people that I feel most comfortable with. And it's the people that I've been able to open up and be as vulnerable as possible with, right? And so I think people want to say shit. They just don't have the ability or the forum to do so. The reason why those platforms didn't ultimately succeed is because they were predicated upon not making anonymous, like-minded connections, It was predicated upon who could say the most honest thing that comes to mind that's also against the grain and kind of crazy. And it was predicated upon like status and getting credit for something. And in an anonymous environment, you can't get credit, right? And so I think being pseudonymous is really important because then somebody gets the credit for X, Y, and Z, whatever they're doing. But I think like the anonymous nature is cool because the worlds are not limited to just like status oriented accomplishments, like yik yak, like posting like the funniest status or the funniest thought. It is about recreating your life. Like now all of a sudden, instead of Akash, who was born in Mountain View, limited to these friends, has this reputation, has done X, Y, and Z in his life. Now that I've grown up, I'm in my 20s and I can take all the wisdom of the last 20 plus years and then apply it to, okay, Akash, what if you had the chance to recreate your life for the very first time? What would it look like? And I think that opportunity is so enticing to people. If I all of a sudden went into this metaverse and I said, oh, Akash from the real world is also just Akash Nigam /4 in the digital world. Everybody's like, oh, that's Akash in the physical world. Let's take all the reputation, all the characteristics of him in the physical world and apply it to his digital self. That's not as interesting, right? Because all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm not able to freely actually express exactly who I want to be because it still has real world implications. Whereas now all of a sudden you can kind of be like a freedom fighter, like you're just a cowboy or a cowgirl in this new world and you can reinvent yourself however you see fit. So I think that's why ultimately, and I think the world is kind of converging around this idea of a new digital world so that the anonymous nature of an action has way more benefits and use cases than it has in the past.
Well, so to that point, how did you guys choose to make the avatars within Genies look the way they do right now? My impression is they still are quite photorealistic and they're more focused on like the face and the body rather than like even things beyond that showcases somebody's identity. So why start here? And then what are you excited about in terms of where it could go further?
You nail on a really good point. We joke about it internally all the time that we have these ideologies and these philosophies. And our current talent genies contradict that because it's like, all right, well, I wouldn't say photorealistic, but they're definitely a clear one-to-one representation. Not definitely one-to-one, but it's a, if you see Justin Bieber in real life, out of a lineup of avatars, of genie avatars, you can pick out Justin Bieber very easily, right? And so in part, the reason why we started with the humanoid system was one, when we shipped, we didn't really know exactly what people were interested in. And keep in mind, we shipped back in December 8th, 2017.
Oh, wow.
So we were working on Genies in 2016. So, that's like, I think 4 to 5 years in this space is light years and eons. And so for that reason, we were kind of like, look, like we think people want to express themselves in avatar format. We don't know exactly what the art style is going to be, but like, why don't we just ship this and see what happens? And we were only 3 to 4 people, and a humanoid system is far easier to create than a creature system, which I'm sure you guys at Roblox definitely know, right? And so, without sharing too much, we definitely have been working on a second rig. And our second rig definitely does accommodate basically everything. And I'm really excited. I mean, we call it a creature system, right? Like we don't even call it an avatar system anymore. We call it a creature system because it's like, look, if I literally want to be an inanimate object, I can be. If I want to be a dragon, a 3-headed dragon with a dog tail, I can be that too. If I want to be a human, I can do that as well. So we want to accommodate for as many different variations of an art style and objects and animals and different species as possible. Is just there's human tendencies, so you have some correlation to it, but it's still clearly a fantastical realm and a different universe, which allows a user to perpetuate that anonymous thought and user story and flow. I think you're very clear in kind of calling out the fact it's like, great, like sick ideology doesn't match up to your talent genies. And I think that's right on the money. And so we're working right now to be able to evangelize the next creature and species system, which allows it to be much more varied so that if Justin wants to use his kind of current Pixar type genie, he can. But if he also wants to go off the beacon path and he wants to create something that's a little bit more fantastical and outside of like real world scope, he can do that too.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, to your credit, I think people actually really love photorealistic avatars, right? I think there's still a bit of an adoption curve here where like not everyone's going to try to be a dragon or like a ghost or a flying cloud. Like that's a little bit too abstract for a lot of people, although it'd be interesting in the future. I want to talk a bit more about the use cases. So I've been on pre-order for the consumer app of Genies for a very long time. Very excited for it to finally come out. But how does the avatars actually manifest in the internet? Like, do people bring that avatar to different universes that they can participate in? Or is it something that they can show off on social media?
Yeah, so we have a 10-year vision, right? Because I think if we want to become the culture's go-to identity for not just the NFT and the crypto or the gaming community, but for social circles and communities outside of all three of those realms. A 16-year-old girl in Iowa that has never played in any of those aspects at all, but all of a sudden wants to be able to interact with her friends on Snapchat or TikTok or any of these other places, can do so through her Genie. We're kind of shooting for that ambitious plan, which I think is far different than what a lot of the ecosystems today are kind of trying to achieve. I think the 10-year vision, without again revealing as much as possible, is really predicated upon harnessing the enthusiasm of the current base today while still trying to show them what's coming tomorrow. We're big believers that if you build for what people want today, by the time you ship far too late and people are no longer interested. So we try to shoot as many years as we're privileged to in advance as possible. So a company like Roblox or Facebook, because you guys have such a hardcore, massive community that's diehard today, and it's millions and millions and millions and millions of people, you can shoot 8 to 10 years in advance. For Genies that has all the celebrities on board, but we haven't rolled out to consumers yet, we can only shoot maybe 2 to 3 years in advance. What we're trying to shoot for is really this concept of a decentralized Disney, meaning that every single person owns their own avatar. You can create your own avatar through our app and so forth. You can go to our marketplace. You can go buy all the digital goods and wearables that matter to you, from icons that you care about, from all of our talent, from the Genies ecosystem and more. And then we provide you all of these tools that allow you to control your avatar, create content with your avatar, and then port it into XR compatible universes, right? So whether that's TikToks or whether that's even Roblox, wherever their social graph exists, right? So a lot of these Gen Z users that we're targeting, their friend circle exists on TikTok, exists on Instagram, exists on these Web 2.0 environments. So we want to make it compatible for the next year or two so that you can put your avatar into those platforms and create content that matters to you. But eventually we want to be able to take it a step further. And we want to be able to provide you with the tools to create your own universe, to create your own space where your friends can come and visit, where you can go visit them as well. And it happens in a decentralized format. So the utility in the very beginning is going to be around, social economics and really social status. And then as we start to roll out our 10-year plan over the tenure, you're going to be able to do a lot more with it.
Interesting. I really like where that's going, actually. And I like that there's a practical lens, which is that it can actually integrate with platforms that people are spending a lot of time on. Personally, I love trying out new outfits. I love exploring fashion, but I don't want to be posing myself, right? What if I can actually take an avatar and wear really interesting, fun outfits that I'm putting together in scenes that, I want to overlay it on? That would be way more low friction and way less personal judgment and exposure than actually having to do that myself, which I think is super cool. Even doing podcasts, right? Why do we have to video? Why can't we have an avatar that's representative of our faces? And that's actually the way in which our voices are captured.
No, have you been spending a lot of time on TikTok lately?
I have not, because I really don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but just by proxy of everyone around me.
I know. I play with that dilemma every single night. It's I know that I can't be on TikTok because it's such a rabbit hole, but it's so important for our user base. And there's been this trend for the last year or so of just watching these Gen Z girls constantly going through outfit choices. I've never seen anything like this. It's they're constantly going to the closet. I'll send you a link after this, but it has an entire sequence of this challenge. It's been literally ongoing for over a year. Whereas people just it's like a fit test, and they keep going to their closet, throwing on different wild costumes and outfits and so forth. And then everybody tries to one up each other. It's a real world Pinterest. And then people have started to show there's this old commercial for a MacBook showing how people have created their avatar and different variations of the avatar and making people pick their favorite one and so forth. So no, I think the Gen Z demo is just so creative and against the grain. And we've actually coined them as alien alphas. They're, they're aliens amongst their peers, but they're alphas, and you become infatuated with them because they're so unique and they own their own lane that you just literally want to follow them to the end of the world. And so there's so many of these Gen Z alien alphas these days coming up on TikTok. And one of the trends that they perpetuate the most is exactly what you're talking about.
That's great. I don't need to download TikTok for that, but I can imagine how awesome it is. Let's talk a bit more about the creation of it. You mentioned that in the future, people are going to be able to modify their outfits and change their avatars, and there's a whole entire creation system around your avatar. So I know you guys have worked pretty closely with artists to produce some of the content that you're developing. How are you guys fostering that entire creation ecosystem, whether it's where you guys are right now, which is probably commissioning more advanced, like expert artists and creatives to help out, to, gradually probably making that more user generated and creating almost like an ecosystem for people to contribute?
Dapper Labs, makers of NBA Top Shot, they debuted NBA Top Shot. They announced that the next big thing that they're going to be announcing is the Genies Marketplace. The partnership with them is really the ability for our marketplace to be hosted on Flow's blockchain so that every single digital wearable that we're selling is an NFT. So that's really the concept of it. The actual art and all the wearables, all the avatars, everything that's created is all in-house. It's all Genies artists and animators. And of course, we produce wearables and avatars for all the talent that we sign. We announced our partnership with WMG. We're the official avatar and digital goods distributor for all the celebrities underneath that umbrella. We're announcing 4 similar stature deals as well that allow us to become the official avatar and digital goods distributor for their roster of talent. But at the end of the day, all the production, everything that you see that's a wearable or an avatar is from Genies.
Interesting. Okay. Well, actually, the marketplace aspect is super, super interesting. So what is going to be the Genies Marketplace and who is going to be able to participate in that?
Yeah. So there's there's a talent that we currently represent. So it's like the Biebers, Mendes, Cardi B, and so forth. They, in today's world, take their Genie on TikTok or Instagram. They perpetuate this narrative or story that they want their fans to become infatuated with, and they use their avatar to tell that story. Then on the right end of the spectrum, you have the consumers. We're going to make it available in December so that anybody can download the app, create their own avatar, adorn themselves from head to toe, and then go use in those social use cases that we talked about earlier. The linchpin in between both of those is the Genies Marketplace. And in the marketplace is going to be a storefront that allows all of our talent to be able to sell digital goods and wearables to all of our consumers here on the right. So if Justin Bieber currently uses his Genie to memorialize a new song release, he can also go ahead and sell limited edition digital wearables and goods for that song to all of his fans and now have avatars from the app itself. And then because that entire marketplace is run on Flow's blockchain, if Bieber was coming out with a Christmas album and he wanted to sell 100 limited edition Santa Claus outfits and one of them was gold or something like that, he could sell it in the marketplace. His fans could go buy it, and every single one of those is an NFT. They can go trade it, they can go sell it, whatever they see fit.
Okay, that's super cool. What are other things that you guys are doing around decentralization and powering decentralized communities, for lack of a better word?
I think first step is moving everything to blockchain is a pretty significant step, right? So Flow's blockchain, it makes everything an NFT, everything of unique ownership and regulated by their smart contract. So I think that's one. Over time, we call it a decentralized Disney because we don't want to be the behemoth in control. We want to relinquish as much control as possible. And we just want to become a tool factory. We're providing as many tools as possible to empower individuals to create their own story, create their own virtual being, to create their own content, to create their own wearables and digital goods and monetize it how they see fit, right? So I do think that's the next shift in the metaverse is that right now you're seeing a lot of companies translate their Web 2.0 environment into a Web 3.0 universe. And I actually think that's the wrong step. At the end of the day, I think, decentralization is supposed to get away from exactly what Facebook is doing today, which is Facebook is like a monopoly of so many different social platforms and you're beholden to them in so many ways. And the whole point of decentralization is to get away and put the onus on the individual, allow them to own their own story and their own life. And so we're kind of going down that path where it's okay, we don't want to be we're not creating a Genie metaverse. We want to empower you to create your own metaverse. So we want to empower you to own your own virtual identity, even more so than you own your physical body in the real world. So we're taking steps. It's a 10-year plan, right? So it's going to take some time. Every single step has some type of achievement. Like in our year 1, we're trying to get avatar affiliation, meaning that you actually care about this being your virtual identity and this being your digital identity. In the second phase, we have decentralized Disney, which is really relinquishing the control and giving it to everybody else. And then number 3 is autonomous machine learning so that your Genie can operate without you even having to control it at the helm. And then I won't bore you with 4 through 10, but you kind of see the trend, and the trend is really taking this from an avatar and trying to translate it into a virtual being over time.
The AI part sounds super cool. In many ways, it sounds like what Lil Miquela was, right? Or what they were trying to do. I think it's really cool that basically in the future, you can create almost characters and with personalities, with full lives that might not be yours and can be operating on their own.
Yeah.
It's scary, but very interesting.
No, I mean, that's literally how I describe kind of the celebrity avatars. I say, like, just imagine that every celebrity currently has a little Michaela version of themselves, and they're able to control and create the story as they see fit. And they deal with no scrutiny of their physical self, and they do things that their physical self is incapable or unwilling to do in any given moment, and their digital self is happy to do it.
Yeah.
So it's a safe haven and like a really cool way to be able to express your thoughts and showcase a different side of your personality.
Absolutely. So let's zoom out for a second. I want to talk about the greater avatar ecosystem or digital identity ecosystem at large. There's a lot of different efforts that are hitting this problem in different ways. I even saw, NVIDIA is trying to get really into AR, VR avatars that are rendered in 3D space. Of course, Facebook has always been really big in VR and just identity systems. One is, what are some of the efforts that you think are actually really interesting and propelling us forward in a way where it's realistic for user adoption? And then two is like, how do you guys see yourselves plug in?
I'm somewhat biased because, I thought Meta's announcement was awesome. I kind of viewed it as like $100 billion of marketing, free marketing for us, and just validation of the space. And I think of the ecosystem and really virtual identity as a whole. I do think the majority of the plays out there are probably ill-advised and are not going to ultimately accrue the consumer adoption that people are expecting. And when Facebook kind of made this announcement, I posted to our company Slack channel that day. I was like, I don't view this as an isolated Facebook announcement. I actually think it's going to require and elicit a response from every single giant out there right now to be able to show their hand about what they're thinking about the metaverse. And sure enough, like the next day, it was like, as you said, NVIDIA, then you had Microsoft, then you had Apple. Like Apple's not going to sit there and let Facebook tell the world that they're going to be the Apple of the metaverse, right? So like everybody has their own card in their own hand, and they're obviously gaming it out years and years in advance. I would say like the stuff that I've been most impressed by is not what the big corporations are doing, but really some of these NFT projects, because there's NFT projects that are sitting there that are really based on financial return. But then there's NFT identity projects out there, which I think are really allowing people to find like-minded individuals of themselves on the internet, build real and authentic connections, and ones that last quite some time. Right. And like going back to like the full purpose of an avatar, right? If you're able to leverage an avatar to its fullest potential, is going to be an avatar in a pseudonymous or an anonymous environment, right? It's not going to be like, of course, like I think there's an avatar spectrum on the left side. Like, of course you can get utility out of an avatar that's not pseudonymous or not anonymous, but like really to take advantage of its full potential, it should be in a pseudonymous environment. You're meeting like-minded individuals. Anything you can do in the physical world, you can do in the digital world, and 100x more. I think the Bored Ape Yacht Club is doing like a really good job, and they're considering an avatar. It's like you get like an individualized avatar. I mean, you're familiar with Bored Ape Yacht Club, right?
I mean, I see it on Twitter like 10 times a day.
Okay, tight. Just making sure. I own a few apes myself, so I'm pretty excited about
Nice.
them. But it's, like honestly, like when I first initially aped in, I kind of was doing it more as recon and research than anything. Where it was like, so why are people so excited about this rabid, hungry base and community on the internet, on Twitter, like you said? And when I got involved in it, immediately I was welcomed with like 1,000 welcome messages, like, hey, like, oh my God, so excited that you're part of this club and blah, 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 and all that type of stuff. I'll bring it back to avatars here in a second, but it kind of brought me back to like when I was growing up, my dad was part of a country club and I hated it. I didn't get why he was part of it. I was like, Dad, you spend a shit ton of money and we go to this country club and you have to, again, spend money at the restaurant and then you don't even golf and like you have to spend money there too. It's like, I was like, why are you part of this country club? And like, he never really said it, but in hindsight, it was like, you're just there for the community. You're there for the exclusive community of like-minded individuals, of innovators, of people that you respect, and you're able to build these long-lasting connections and friendships. And so I kind of look at these NFT digital identity projects as kind of like the next wave of, it's almost like the country club of the internet. It's like Greek life of the internet. It's like, why do you join a fraternity and sorority to spend all that money every single month? Well, I did it because I was like, I want to be able to find people that are like me and build these long-lasting friendships forever. And so I do think that the avatars allow you to do that on the internet. It allows you to really find people that are like yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you can build these long-lasting friendships. And the more time that we spend being digitally immersed, the more that these connections and these representations are going to matter. So Bored Ape Yacht Club's one. I really like the Robos or another one, like those two communities. And I consider them NFT digital identity communities are amazing. We actually Genies has a venture fund now called Humans. And we just made an announcement 2 weeks ago that 80% of our capital is going to be allocated just to NFT digital identity projects, because there's so many different ways to elicit authenticity through virtual identity. And so we want to be able to invest in as many of those projects as possible.
That's incredible. Well, before you ape out, I have one last question for you. So I know that you really care about mental health and wellness and actually fostering like a positive version of the internet in the future. So what are some of the things that you would kind of advise people to think about when it comes to facilitating more positive relationships on the internet, making sure that being anonymous or pseudo-anonymous does not turn into a cesspool of negative, toxic activities, but actually something that's wholesome? What are things to think about?
No, you bring up a good point. I actually think two positions that are kind of like considered starter positions for anything blockchain / NFT related right now are going to turn into the two most important positions for any big company in the metaverse moving forward. One of them is head of community, right? Like head of community, like right now in its nascent stage, is kind of almost viewed as this like social media manager. I think head of community is going to be really fucking important because it's somebody that fosters the entire base of users and collectors and digital identity representatives, right? So like, I think that's one. And the second one is head of moderation, which right now I think is almost like, oh, here's the template of how to moderate, Web 2.0, right? Like Web 2.0 had to go through the same thing. It's like when the internet was first created, it was like, okay, like in the real world, if you like cross the line, the police comes and arrests you. You get physically kicked out of the bar, like blah, blah, blah. Like there's things like that, right? On the internet, it was like, dude, people can say whatever they want. Like, what are we going to do? Well, then they invented kind of the moderation tools of Web 2.0, which was like flagging, reporting, like abuse, like blah, blah, blah. Like all of a sudden, like as a user, as like a Twitter user, like I do this sometimes. It's like, I mean, one, you can block people, but then also two, there's like tools that are being created that allow you to prevent abuse, and you can turn on different switches and allow certain people to respond and things like that. I think Web3 is going to be going through the same thing, right? They have to come out with new moderation tools to encourage regulation, right? If anybody starts spamming, which I know already happens in Discord and some other places, people start spamming or saying certain things that are just clearly abuse and nothing productive in terms of a contrarian opinion, then that person will probably get isolated or disciplined in some format. The only big difference here is that this is decentralized, right? So like Web 2.0 is not decentralized. In a decentralized nature, you kind of rely on the entire community to basically regulate. What I can say is so far on Twitter, I know it is a Web 2 environment, but you're still dealing with a decentralized crowd and decentralized projects. The regulation is really the mob of the internet, and they will cancel you in 2 seconds. I've seen so many accounts just get canceled. Can no longer participate in the environment, can never participate in the project again. I would rather get regulated by the SEC than get regulated by the mob of the internet at this point. And so like, I think like something to keep an eye out for is more so, of course, there's going to be a lot more authentic connections. I think you're going to see popular social platforms in the metaverse be very closely knit and not so much wide and big. And that moderation, it just has to play an integral role, because there can be as much positivity and optimism in the world in these metaverses, but there are going to be people that are cancerous to the entire environment. And we just need to make sure that we regulate that.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. I mean, I really hope that you don't get suffocated by the full mob of the internet, but I like that smaller communities will help regulate on its own.
Definitely.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. This was really, really eye-opening. And let's keep talking.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That was Akash Nigam, CEO of Genies. You can find him on Twitter at Akash R. Nigam, or you could just download the app Genies on the App Store. If you like this episode, help spread the word and please leave a review. Are you working on a metaverse adjacent project or industry? I'd love to hear about it, and you can reach me at annie@hellometaverse.fm. Thank you for listening. This is your host, Annie Zhang, and I will see you in 2 weeks.